Chapter 17. After lunch, the guys and I went back to the house. I gathered up the paperwork I'd been after Monday when we'd been kidnapped and sat down to figure out what to do next. Most of the information on what I was looking for was in my office at the shop, but I had made some notes on my PCD. I looked those up and started searching for those items again. "Gavin?" I said, looking up. "Yes," he came in from the living room where he'd been sitting. "If I give you my key, will you stop by the shop tonight and pick up my notebook and the files on my desk?" "No problem, but are you sure I should?" "What do you mean?" I frowned. "The Anikitos told you to take the week off for a reason. Don't you think working from here kinda defeats that?" I thought for a moment how to answer that, finally settling on, well, I'm sure he had a reason, but I don't know exactly what it was. Was his reason to change my schedule? It could be he was trying to give me some time to rest. On the other hand, maybe he wanted to keep me away from the shop for some reason. Since the Guidrys found me there, it's a safe bet that anyone else would think they could too, but then again, it's not exactly like we're hiding out, we're in my home. I paused, taking a deep breath. I'm sure Bill had his reasons, but since he didn't share them with me, I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong by doing what I can from here. Besides, it's really you and Nickie I'm taking mercy on. I could insist we spend every afternoon in his gym, practicing. Gavin's eyes got wide as I went on and on about Bill's possible motives. I don't think he'd expected me to argue. Spending time in the gym every day isn't a bad idea, Nickie said from behind me. He'd moved one of the dining room chairs to sit next to the back door and had been playing a game on his PCD. Gavin looked at Nickie like he'd lost his mind. I'm not talking about spending every afternoon there, but an hour or two every day would be good. It would help keep you in shape and make your self-defense second nature. I don't know, Gavin looked from Nickie to me and back. What about when she goes back to work next week? What time do you go into the shop? He looked at me. Usually about 8. There's nothing set in stone, but I like to make my calls to the East Coast early. And what time does the Theron leave every morning? Usually about 4:30, or he did, until recently. So you come into the gym at 5, work out for a couple hours, then you still have time to shower and get to the shop. I blinked at him. Just the thought of getting up before 5 if I didn't have to made me want give him an instant no, but the idea of regular workouts and defending myself becoming second nature was more appealing. Mornings really weren't my thing, but I could do it. My eyes moved to Gavin, then flicked to Nickie and back to Gavin as a slow grin spread across my face. Gavin gave me a wary look. You're gonna do it, aren't you? I think so. I looked back to Nickie. Is there any way to set the heat in there on a timer? Yeah, why? 'Cause as much as I don't like getting up in the morning, I like freezing in the morning even less. I'll do better if the worst of the chill is gone before we start, and if it has to be turned on manually, that won't happen. Nickie chuckled and shook his head slowly. It doesn't matter how cold it is after a few minutes, you work up enough heat to keep you warm. You want it warm in there, Gavin said. Trust me. I shot him a frown and looked back to Nickie. Trust me, early morning isn't my best time, warm will be better, even if I'm dripping sweat. Whatever you want. Do you want to meet me there, or do I need to come here and get the two of you? We'll have to ask the Theron, Gavin said before I had a chance to answer. I rolled my eyes, of course they'd have to check with Devon first. As much as I might wish we could just do what I want, I understood that they answer to him. They're here because he had asked them to be, because he wants me to remain safe. I understood that, as much as a pain in the ass it might be. Taking a deep breath, I let it out in a rush. All right, talk to him tonight and we'll start tomorrow. If he agrees, Gavin stipulated. If he agrees. I had no doubt he'd agree to me going, but I had no guesses at what he'd decide about getting there. When Devin came through the back door, I was boning the chicken so I could make enchiladas for dinner. "Hey baby," he said from next to the door. "How's your afternoon?" "Good. Yours?" "Long. Where are the guys?" He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "They were in the living room last I looked, but they've been making rounds now and then. I haven't kept track." "I should go talk to him." He buried his face in my neck and nuzzled. "Hang on a minute, I want to talk to you first." "What is it you want?" he asked, his arm still around my waist. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Mom suggested I try to work from home some, to keep from getting quite so crazy sitting here. "I know that not having something to do is hard on you," he said. "This afternoon wasn't so bad. I at least felt like I was getting something done, but that's not really what I wanted to talk to you about." "What is?" "Well, Gavin started giving me hell about trying to work, and why Bill had told me to take the week off." Devin started to say something, but I kept going. I shut him down on that, but one of the things he said made a little sense. He said I might as well spend every afternoon working out at the gym if I wasn't going to rest like Bill wanted. And Nickie suggested I do just that, not spend every afternoon there, but an hour or two each day in the mornings before I go to the shop. "Is that something you want?" He rubbed his cheek on top of my head. I was quiet a moment. "Yeah, I think it is." "You think?" I'm not gonna lie. I know it's not going to be easy. I dropped the last of the bones in the bowl and moved to the sink, stepping out of his arms to wash my hands. Not that I won't enjoy the exercise, it's the getting up before the sun and facing the cold that'll be hard for me. I turned to look at him. He'd stripped out of his jeans and put on a pair of sweats I kept on the shelf over the washer for when he came in muddy. "You're sure you want to do this?" he asked, bending down until his lips hovered just above mine. "I'm sure I don't want to be afraid all the time. I think regular workouts will help that. I'll be more sure, more confident in my ability to defend myself." I sat upright in bed as the scream of an alarm startled me awake. Realizing what the noise was, I took a deep breath and dropped one hand against my chest. I glanced at the window and cringed at the black void it showed. Getting up before the sun wasn't my favorite thing, especially if I had only the cold to look forward to. Summer was easier. Not only did the sun come up earlier, but even before sunup it was nice. My heart back at its normal pace, I threw the covers back and got up. In the bathroom, I looked wistfully at the shower while I brushed my teeth. The hot water running over my body would wake me up, but it wasn't a good idea just before going out where the temperatures were below freezing. I finished with my teeth and was pulling my hair up into a ponytail when Devin appeared in the bathroom doorway. He stopped a moment, watching me as I stood in my underwear messing with my hair. After a moment he stepped in, and I spotted a steaming mug in one hand. I thought this might help. He set the cup on the counter beside me. Without a word, I wasn't sure I could speak coherently yet. I picked it up and took a long drink. Closing my eyes, I felt the dark elixir make its way down my throat, warming as it went. I may have imagined it, but I would have sworn I also felt the caffeine seeping into my blood. I took another drink and set the mug down to finish with my hair. While the house wasn't exactly cold, it wasn't warm either. We turned the heat down when we went to bed, and since we were both getting ready to leave, there wasn't much point in turning it back up now. Another long pull from the sweetened liquid, and I leaned over and kissed Devin's cheek. "Thanks." I moved past him to the bedroom where I'd laid out my gym clothes the night before. Pulling them on, I took out a clean pair of sweatpants and put them on over the thinner pair before heading to the kitchen in my stocking feet. I rarely got up early enough to fix Devin breakfast, knowing that if he got to the house early enough, Mom would feed him when she fed Dad. This morning, however, I needed to eat too. There wouldn't be much time after the gym before I needed to get to work. I pulled eggs and leftover biscuits from the fridge and got to work. Wow, is this gonna be a regular thing now? Devin asked, refilling his coffee. I blinked and shot him a disgusted look. I could cook and move, but I wasn't awake enough for real conversation yet, much less sarcasm. Where's Raphael? I asked, never looking up from where I was breaking eggs into a bowl. Outside, he's making a round of the place, making sure nothing's been disturbed overnight. Does he want food? Dev was silent for a few minutes, then said, he says if you're cooking anyway, he could eat, but don't cook just for him. I scowled at the bowl. Obviously, I was cooking anyway. Then he's eating. Once I'd cracked all the eggs, I took a short break to refill my coffee and take a few drinks before finishing with the cooking. By the time breakfast was ready, I was almost able to interact with people. I was not quite so bad when I got more sleep, but I was sleeping so hard when the alarm went off that I was having a hard time waking my mind. The three of us sat at the table and ate. The only sounds at first were the soft clinks of flatware striking the porcelain of the plates. After a little bit, Devin looked at Raphael. We're gonna do things a little different this morning. All right, what do you need? The enforcer asked without hesitation. Instead of Mickey and Gavin coming here to relieve you, Gavin will come, and the two of you will take Nickie over to Mickey's. In your car would be best. Once you're there with both of them, you're done for the day. Mickey will take them wherever after that. All right. If this works out, it may become an everyday thing. Does this mean I get more of her cooking? He winked playfully in my direction, including me in the exchange. If I'm up and cooking, I might as well feed you too. Good, your cooking is a far sight better than mine. Did you have some of the enchiladas in the fridge? I asked. I'd made plenty, so he would have something to eat on the middle of his shift. No, ma'am, it didn't seem right to go nosing through your refrigerator. I took a deep breath and let it out in a rush. What did you eat? I had a couple of snacks I brought with me, he said with a shrug. I shot him an unhappy scowl. In the future, when I say make yourself at home, I mean it. That means help yourself to food, drinks, whatever. I don't want you feeling like you have to bring everything you'll want during your shift. Feel free to make coffee or help yourself to anything. You haven't worked a shift with Gavin yet, but you'll notice he treats this place like his own, with the exception of roaming the place in his underwear. He damned well better not. Devin put in. I smiled at my husband's objection. And I want you to do the same. Yes, ma'am. That's another thing. Raphael lifted his brows and waited. Enough of this ma'am shit. I've told you to call me Nickie. Yes, ma'am. I gave him a venomous look. I suspected this time he was doing it just to screw with me. I understand the formality when the situation calls for it, and I'll put up with it then, but in my house I'm not ma'am, do you understand? Yes, ma'am, there was light dancing in his eyes, and now I was sure he was screwing with me. I growled and went back to my food, finishing what was on my plate and taking it to the sink. You deal with him, I flung at Devin as I went in the bedroom for my shoes.